We have arrived, pulling into gate number 14, and just a little bit late. We were on the ground, but we couldn't get a gate. How's that for a great excuse? So back with Fearless Flight Live once again, with me, Capt. Ron, our other co-host, Peter, Diane, and Eric, and we're glad to come back with you this week and help any of you who have an issue with being afraid to fly, anybody who might know somebody who's afraid to fly, and anybody who just likes to hang around and talk airplanes now and then. This was a interesting week in aviation. There is more concern out there about unruly passengers. We'll have a couple of words to talk about that tonight. The first thing we want to do is remind you, we're now pushing 800 people in our Fearless Flight Birds of a Feather group. I know I just had 4 more coaching students that joined this week. So we're hoping that if you're not a member, you will be a member. And it is the place where it's happening in Fearless Flight Live right now. It's not that we don't look at our other comments on our regular Facebook page, but we do try to pay special attention to those of you who join the Birds of a Feather group there. On tonight's show, we are going to talk about, I got a little bit of a poll question. And we were planning to have our second consecutive call-in show. We only had one in a row, it turns out, but we'll get it back next week. And we had a little bit different, some different players this week, and we tried a different protocol. So it didn't quite work. Okay, we're talking about you can put the next slide on if you want. We're talking about the captain's corner, and we're talking about you can put the next slide on if you want. Okay. Are you hearing an echo?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I managed to get that off. So we're on our tonight's topics here.
There we go.
Okay. So that is the call-in number for next week, and Captain's Corner we'll do a Q&A as best we can. We'll do it like we've done it in past shows. We've got a couple of things in the aviation world up there, and we'll talk about the 101 classes coming up, and those that I apologize that we had to cancel this past weekend there. So, okay, the poll question is, and this is based again on a couple of chats that I observed this week and some of my coaching. It says, what's the favorite story you tell yourself when you think about flying? Okay, and if you can't think of one, hopefully this will help you illuminate it. And is it just a story or is it real? Yes or no? Okay. We'll start out with talking a little bit about unruly passengers. You may have seen that absolutely frightful picture of that woman. I forget what airline it was. I think it was a Southwest again. Do you guys remember? Not that it matters what there it was.
American.
I think it was
American, yeah. Somewhere back east, and a lady lost control, and the horrific pictures are her sitting in her seat with duct tape around her chest and around the seat, and also over her mouth. She looked like a hostage victim, actually. And apparently she was having a bad day, got up and tried to open the door, which is a definite ticket to the, what do they call it in the Olympics when you're up receiving your medal? Anyway, she was the person of honor in the moment. And the only thing I want to say about that is, Diane and the group here, we were talking about this a little bit beforehand about, I've heard speculation that sometimes could it be people's fear of flying that causes them to lose it like that. And when that hit the news, I happened to have 4 coaching calls that day, and every one of the people brought it up because that was part of their claustrophobia fear about losing control and gaining unwanted attention like that. And I tried to reassure them, as I'll try to do you, that's not fear of flying. In fact, people who are afraid to fly are less likely to make a scene than anybody else. It's usually alcohol and drugs or some sort of mental issues. And I'm sure that's what the case will be in this. And when you think about it, for as worried as we are when we have an emotional issue like fear of flying or anxiety disorders, a big part of us wants to think that if I have a panic attack, that's going to be visible to people around me. And I can tell you, in the 34 years that I've been doing this, and the few years before that, that I wasn't working with fearful flyers, I've never known of anybody to have a panic attack and gain that kind of attention on the airplane. And one of the things you can do to minimize any unwanted attention is, when you get to the gate, you identify yourself to the gate agent, as you well know by now, as a person with a medical disorder. Get on the airplane, board early. And even for some reason, if you don't board early, but when you meet the flight attendant at the bottom of the jetway getting on the airplane, identify yourself. Hi, my name's Ron, and I'm a little nervous about flying. And what I normally do is recommend is boarding early and asking to meet the pilots. And when you go meet the pilots, you repeat that basically, and you add, I'd like to, anything you can tell us about the flight tonight or today would be appreciated. But everybody that I've coached in the last 15 years, that this is probably as far back as I can remember, who has followed that protocol and then continued the flight, has told me that the flight attendants inevitably check on them a couple of times walking up and down the aisle. And Diane's nodding her head there. Yeah. I know she would be faithful to doing that. So fears about outing yourself because of your anxiety just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
When I fly with people, I'm sitting right next to them, and they tell me that they're going crazy in there. It doesn't show on the outside. Why? Because there's a higher part of your that's what this part of the brain does take over, and it says, I don't care how crazy you feel due to your anxiety about flying right now. Do not embarrass us.
Yeah.
And because that goes all the way back, like our ancestors again, to our tribe fears of being kicked out of the tribe, and we do not like being kicked out of the tribe. So you won't do that. Diane, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you've been doing this, both you and Eric, for so very long, and I've only been a flight attendant for a little over 2 years, but you're absolutely right. I have never seen anyone, as you described it, go out of control and then find out that they were a fearful flyer. I haven't actually seen anybody really out of control. I've seen several very, very distressed passengers, but it had nothing to do with their fear of flying. So you're right. They're going to be sitting there, maybe clutching the armrest, but they're not going to be acting out at all. And I did want to add something with regard to that photo online of that passenger being duct taped. In several of the comments that I saw with regard to that particular situation, that event, there were some that said, oh my goodness, couldn't they have talked with this individual and been more gentle, or words to that effect. And those are lovely thoughts. But the reality is that you're in a little metal tube. You're at 35,000 feet. You have anywhere from 60 to another 100 passengers that you have to keep safe. Absolutely have to keep safe. You have to, after keeping ourselves safe, we have to protect the pilots. And then we have to protect all the rest of the passengers.
And she was actually biting them.
Yes, exactly.
That's why they put the duct tape over her mouth.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that is something that none of us ever wants to have to do. Yeah. But certainly there are consequences for that kind of very dangerous behavior. So that was a last resort, I'm sure, for the flight attendants.
So I have a question here coming in.
Okay.
So if that person just send a messenger message, so I won't say the name, but so are you saying that that person was not afraid to fly, so she wasn't intoxicated or whatever because she was afraid to fly, so it must have been something completely different?
You mean the one that got the duct tape treatment?
Yeah.
That's
we don't know that.
Well, no, the question is to you, Ron. The question is to you.
Okay.
So you don't think that person was afraid to fly at all? They just had some other maybe
Yeah,
And
then
also
they alluded to that she was, she lacked the coherence that you would expect from somebody, even if you're afraid to fly.
Right.
And they literally, she just went berserk, and she went right for the door, and they of course immediately grabbed onto her and stuff like that. Now I don't have any I don't have any information that she wasn't intoxicated to the point because she was afraid to fly, but I highly doubt that. Based on the reports that I saw in there, but that's a good question. But I've never seen it. Eric, have you ever even been approached by a flight attendant anywhere after the pushback that you've got somebody that's that's back there and you need to go back to the gate or make a decision whether you're going to let them off the airplane or anything like that?
No, the only time I've never had to divert or had it come up, I've ejected some of them at the gate who fortunately demonstrated that at the gate before the door was closed. But never in flight, nor I don't have any friends who know a guy who knows a guy whose brother's cousin has had that happen. Never.
Yeah.
30 whatever years.
I had one instance that we were all buckled, the flight attendants were all buckled in. I was forward and a first class passenger kept getting up. She actually came forward into the galley. It was a little unsettling for all of us. But her situation was, I'm sure it was she was not afraid to fly. She kept worrying about her baggage, whether or not her baggage was going to be transferred and those kinds of things. So this was a different anxiety issue, had nothing to do with her being afraid to fly.
And I love what Oliver just put in the chat. Oliver said, I want to be on a flight where she's on because she gets all the attention. And that's
exactly. Yeah. So I've, in all my years, the only stories I've heard about people actually who were afraid to fly, and it got so bad that they approached the flight attendant and they ended up getting off the airplane after they pushed back. If we just push back and somebody makes a big scene about that, not an ugly scene, but you can tell they're freaked out. Most of the guys I know, most of the pilots I know are going to pull back into the gate and let them off. And I've only talked to a couple of people where they actually left the terminal, the ramp area right out by the gates, and they then chose to go back. And there's no rules on that in our how to fly books. It's just up to the discretion of the captain. But I know that most of the captains that I've talked to, if you have somebody that's really, really, really upset, stuff like that, you're going to take the delay and go back to the gate. It's just not worth taking them on board. And and as it relates to the unruliness and the discipline, it's really important from the flight crew's point of view to get people off before you close the door. Because if you have anybody, particularly alcohol, if you can get them to calm down, or at least they mask that, and you close the door, they think they've got you now. And I've been on a couple of flights where we were fortunate to get them off before that happened. And there's a little bit of a conflict of interest between us and the gate people, because they want to serve the person. They don't want them there after to miss their flight, and they certainly don't want to deal with them, figuring out what they're going to, rebook them and all that. And it's not that they push them on us, but they're motivated for customer service and stuff like that. So sometimes it can get a little testy between us, but that's where the captain really needs to step up and say, we appreciate your point of view, but we don't want to take a chance with this person, because once we close the door and get airborne, it's a lot harder to work with.
And the pilots in those few instances that I've experienced, the pilots have been, you as captains, been so very supportive of us, because the two flight attendants will independently assess the individual before we close the door, as you say. And if we have concerns, we'll go to flight deck, talk to you guys. And every single time that's happened, the captain has said, I'm up here in the front. You two are the ones who are going to have to deal with this individual. Do you want to do it? And they have always respected our judgment. It's very much of a team effort.
There is a former flight attendant who launched a book this week about crazy things that she has observed. And the funniest one I can remember, it wasn't firsthand, it was secondhand. I was in training, and this was a flight attendant trainer. And he had a really good sense of humor and everything. But he was on a flight out of Vegas. We used to fly in the wee hours out of Vegas, really highly discounted fares. And he had a flight with a guy who lost it wasn't alcohol. He just simply had a breakdown, and he comes running out of the rear lab completely naked. And yet you can imagine you're a flight attendant and everybody's basically asleep at that point in time, until he comes running down the aisle in his all together. And so the funny thing was he was doing a Q&A for us during recurrent training once, and people said, "What did you do?" He said, "What do you mean?" I ran up the aisle and I put a big tackle on him, and people piled a bunch of blankets on us, and so we have our entertainment value as well.
The problem is now we don't have blankets anymore. So
exactly. So now we got to just figure out other ways.
Advantage to the naked people.
Yeah. So I want to reemphasize that the issue that this brought out for the people that I was coaching with this week was not about the unruly part, worrying about them descending their or offending them, or the behavior somehow intersecting with their comfort on that flight. They were worried, could they be the ones drawing all the attention? So I'll just go back to close that, say, no, you by and large, you're going to feel terrible on the inside, but it's not going to show on the outside. And you're not going to breach that kind of decor for what it's worth. Okay, there was an interesting post on our YouTube channel, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit. And I've actually scored some people to become followers off of YouTube like this. So this person writes in, says, "Fearful Flyer here. It's by far my least favorite way to travel. Unable to fly unless I'm loaded up on full strength Dramamine. I know people always try to reassure me with odds, statistics, etc. But here's the problem. I think about the poor souls who tragically were killed in airplane crashes, accidents, etc. And they too had the same odds as everyone else. I'm sure most of them boarded those doomed flights," emphasis there, saying flying is the safest form of transportation and the odds are in my favor. Nothing bad will happen, not knowing that when the cabin door closed, it was the end of their lives. That's why I have a fear of flying, because whenever I fly, I feel the odds are 50-50, because in my mind, I'm either going to get to my destination alive and safe, or I won't. Okay. That's why I hate flying. I had an interview with a national news magazine show, and the host, I won't say his name, right off the bat, he says he's flown 13. He's a big baseball nut. And he said, "I've flown 13 times in my life. And every time I've flown, I landed without dying." And he said, "If you do that in baseball, that's 1,000%. I mean, so again, the analogy is totally wacko. It has nothing to do with that. Those aren't the way you figure odds in there. And,
I love this logic. He's obviously a math major with a 50-50. And as dim of bulbs as the airlines are, they wouldn't buy new if they knew they were going to lose the airplane half the time. Number one.
Yeah.
Number two, the doomed flight that it was doomed before it left, and the black cloud was over it. And I remember early on when you foolishly would let me speak to a live class, and when I get nervous, just the humor, I couldn't stop. And somebody in the front row asked, "Do you ever just know?" And I said, "Just know what?" "You just knew that day was going to be it." And I said, "Well, number one, no, because I would have called in sick."
Exactly.
And you're in the back going, "Stop." But I couldn't stop. I said, "Roll." I said, "But there are 2 times." And the guy goes, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah. One, if the pilot gives you investment advice, you're going to die. And it'll hurt a lot. And 2, if you see a major world famous rock band board the airplane and you're already on, that might be actually a good time to get off and go to the bar and have $20 cocktails and get a voucher or something to go on the next flight. It's a statistically bad place.
Or if they are staying at your hotel on your layover.
Yeah.
Either one. Yeah. We actually... I forget the name of the band, but one time we were going into Burbank, and for the entire 2-week period around the live show, the band was staying there, and they made them provide some multi-million-dollar deposit And
my
because
gosh.
and they knew that they were going to trash the place. And I mean, it was amazing. It was the Burbank Hilton is where
Oh
it
my
was.
gosh.
Big hotel. And we stayed for about 2 weeks off at a different hotel there. Okay, so let me call on Dieter. Do we have anybody that was bold enough to put an answer in there as far as that they think it really is about the flying, Dieter?
Hold on. I'm just let me explain, because that's okay. So there are a couple of comments, and first I want to just say to David and Sue and Stephanie. So the idea, because the questions came up about when are we doing classes on the East Coast or somewhere else, and so the whole goal is to have a Cleared for Takeoff 201 online course that then allows us, for example, we know, Sue, you're in the Boston area, so we know there's a couple people in the Boston area. If we have enough to warrant for Captain Ron then to come out and fly with 5 or more people, that's the whole goal. So then, David, I believe you're down in Miami, if memory serves right. So we will be able to accommodate different areas across the United States with that approach, so that the course is taken beforehand. We'll do a short webinar just like before the day or two before we actually will fly, and that will allow us to be much more mobile. So if you are not in the Phoenix or LA area where it's possible to do the classes live, this online model will really serve as the ability to do flight classes, smaller or larger, because if there's enough people that take it, you get all of us. Depends on how many of you want to fly. So I hope that clears that up. And I know, Sue, you were in your original 201 class, so it'll be something similar to that. And I hope that with that, it won't take.
We're going to shift the responsibility, and I'll go one step further. October, we're going to have a 201 online by October. Okay,
All right.
You heard it here, and for whatever it's worth. And it's a lot of work on this end, but it's the only way to go. Dieter and I were leaning that way prior to COVID, and COVID was just the nail in the coffin. Might not be the best analogy for the group that we're talking to tonight, but that's what we're going to do. So by October, we're going to have an online class, and we are also looking forward to holding a flight in Boston. And I feel confident that's probably going to be the first place in the U.S. that's going to go, simply from your lobbying efforts, Susan. So
well,
anyway.
and Sue McGlasio as well. And between the two of you guys, and then there's Vicky.
Yeah, I say Sue, and that gets both of them. So
okay,
Susan.
gotcha. And by the way, just to summarize the poll question, no, nobody actually believes that the airplane is really unsafe, or
because that's critical. Because I'm going to cut this the YouTube comment. I'm going to provide the answer that I gave to this person and acknowledge the issue. It is the stories that we tell ourselves, and it is very convincing when your brain says, your odds are 50-50. Well, yeah, if you only fly once in your life, your odds are 50-50. You'll either make it or you won't. Okay, but that's not the way odds are placed. And if you recall, what I've said before is our minds think in terms of possibilities, not probabilities. So when I say your odds of dying are the probability of dying in an airplane crash in a tier 1 carrier are 1 in 33.2 million, what you need to have me say is the odds are 0 in that, because your brain says I'll be that one possibility that will die in that crash here. So what I wrote back to this person was, your thinking is very logical based upon the story that you tell yourself. And I'll be the first to admit that I'm not here to talk anybody out of their belief system, even if it doesn't make sense to me about flying. My goal is to help those people who do want to rid themselves of that limitation. And I talked about the fact that the 50-50 odds that he feels that's an accurate way of expressing it, because it comes from his intuition, and his intuition is a part of that process in the brain that makes 95% of our decisions every day. We've talked about that's the elephant brain talking. That's the part that convinces you, even when it doesn't know what the hell it's talking about, that it knows what the hell it's talking about. And we rely on that. And that's what got us through a lot of times that were critical in our ancestors' history to survive. They had to make quick decisions. But now you have to slow yourself down. And when I do coaching, I give people literally activities that they can do that will cause their mind to shift from the fast thinking, the intuitive part, over to the logical and analytical one there. So you can't trust your intuition in those cases. This all comes from a fella who pioneered the work in the mind and looking at those processes. He wrote a book called Thinking Fast and Slow, and his name was Daniel Kahneman, and he got a Nobel Prize for his work. So you know, no matter how compelling the story is that you tell yourself, it is still a story. So that's why the process is identify the triggers, and then go deeper. What's the story you tell yourself that cause those triggers to activate the part of the brain, the amygdala, that makes you fearful? And once you get working on those, you can get down to the essence of getting over your fear of flying. Let's go to slide number 16, Dieter, okay. And we'll close it up with that, and with a final few words about the 101 classes. Okay, so that's Dieter. Yeah, okay. All right, so this was a really cool article on that I saw on the news feed today, and it was a picture that they captured. This lady captured a picture. She was sitting next to someone who had anxiety over flying, and it said, the lady next to me on the plane was having an anxiety attack during takeoff, so I did what I had to do. We got through it together. People in the comments section could relate. People that were responding on Twitter all thought that was a very touching, moving experience for them. And one user said, you know, you all know, everybody who sees this and has a fear of flying is going to chime in there and say, yeah, that's me. That was nice that they did that. And I'm forever grateful when someone did that for me one time and all that. So, and then they had some tips about what to do to reduce your anxiety on an airplane flight. They talk about planning for your anxiety. Well, yeah, that's I would say I would go one step further. You need to build a plan for your anxiety. What can you do to prepare for your anxiety? And I would say, don't cross your fingers and toes and hope that Mother Nature intervenes and somehow magically on your next flight, you're no longer afraid. That's why people hang on to this for 10 years on average before they come and seek help, because they're constantly thinking that, well, maybe something will be different the next time. Yeah, it'll probably be worse. Okay, so you need to build a plan. Relaxation techniques. Have an experienced travel buddy. Okay, when I coach with people, I invite them to have a partner, spouse, or a friend, or people that they might be flying with, and we talk about what can they do to support you during those moments. They don't have to be a psychologist. They don't have to be a pilot to know some things to do. And so what we do is just talk to them about how you can support the person who's afraid, because it's often not as bad, but equally frustrating for someone who loves someone who's afraid to fly, because you feel helpless when you see them in pain and you don't know what to do. Very, very common experience there. They talk about exercise and getting sleep and all that. Yeah, but the people that are watching our show, those aren't the people that are a little nervous. Those are the people who white knuckle themselves or they avoid it completely. So anyway, any last comments on there that we need to respond to, Dieter? Because we're going over.
I just want to echo Don's comment here. It's truly, and he just said at the end, you got to live your life no matter what your head says, and that is so true. It just often when these anxiety routes are triggered, they are felt in our bodies, right? So, and that's what Ron was trying to hit home again. You can't think your way out of it, and ironically, it's actually being with it first that allows the two circuits, right, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, to kind of like create enough of a equilibrium where you can then jump, right? And then you have the choice to choose to, where you put your thoughts and how you feel. But when we're in that anxiety loop, just thinking positive thoughts or, things like that won't really help, because that part in you, the elephant, as we call it, knows, and basically knows that you have no chance.
Yeah,
So-
it's your best thinking got you into it. It won't be the same thinking that gets you out. You got to think differently. You got to change the way you think. In order to change the way you think, you got to educate yourself. You got to learn how to disrupt or distract your thinking, and you got to be willing to socially connect with other people out there. Those are the three legs of our stool of getting over this. And so, and they've been working for 34 years, and they still work today. Last thing, I want to apologize for people. I canceled the Saturday night class and the Sunday morning webinar. Circumstances beyond my control, yeah, to some degree, but I had to make a strategic decision whether or not to go on with that based on what was going on in my life. And so I did that. So apologize to anybody who was registered for that. If don't give up. I sent out an invitation for a free coaching call to anybody who registered for that. So I'm looking forward to any of you who have some more urgent needs to sign up for that. Coaching call is still coming in. I'm going to sneak off and visit my son up in a cooler part of the country, up in Durango, Colorado this week. And but I'm still going to leave my slots open for coaching there. So I take my portable office with me. And if you have a need, don't hesitate to do that.
I want to answer one question that I bet our people have been thinking that I'll never remember later and won't come in. And Diane brought it up as a joke about, we were talking earlier about turbulence and all that kind of stuff. And if the call button rings, she's smart enough not to get up, but once in a while the call button ring and ring and ring. Junior flight attendant will stagger up and think somebody's having a heart attack. And the passengers will say, do you think my bag will make it? And I'm sure they would have to resist the temptation. Do you think your bag will survive the crash, or do you think your bag will make the connection? Which is
or if you keep this up, your bag will make it, but you won't.
So, but what I wanted to tell you, because I worry about my bag, I go on diving trips and I chew my manicure down to the quick, thinking about the stuff getting there, because if it doesn't show up, I can't very well go on a Jeep safari and take pictures of rhinos. So until I actually see it when I come out, I'm nervous. But in the last 5 to 10 years, all the major airlines have installed really nice, very high speed bag sorting systems with a laser that reads those tags. Nothing like the turnstile above that you get the bag out. That thing underneath, you can hear it. It sounds like a jet engine underneath the terminal. That thing sorting bags is bringing them through there at freaking 60 miles an hour. And even your bag, if the only chance you would have of getting off an airplane and beating your bag to the next airplane is if it was at the very next gate, because your bag, the bag person wouldn't go, oh, Denver's over there, I'll just carry it over. They wouldn't do that. They would put it on the sorting belt so that the computer tracked that it went in and out onto the right airplane. That would be the only chance you were going to beat it. Even if you got in the terminal and mowed down everybody in front of you, there's a very slim possibility that you would ever get to the next airplane before your bag did. It's unbelievable the connection times they can make. Yeah. So you can rest assured that even if you miss your connection, your bag is there getting a day head start on the vacation and having a very nice time.
Yes.
And why did it improve in the airline industry, Eric? Not because the airlines were feeling so badly about losing everybody's bag, but because after 9/11, security required it. They had to have bag matching, positive bag match. And so that's why, and that was one of the dramatic improvements that people started to notice that their bags arrived with them. And
very high tech.
Yeah. The best part about the thing is even if it doesn't make the flight for some reason, they know where it is. Yes. In past days, it might literally have gone to Miami. And you might never see it again. So anyway, all right. Hey, thanks everybody out there. We appreciate you hanging in there with us. We'll be back next week with another edition, and I will promise you as much as I can that we will have the call-in feature working. That is going to be the new format. So get your questions written down. We want to make you the focus of the show. And the best way to do that is to have you come on and tell us your stories and make it something that is much more interesting to you than just listening to the four of us. Not that we aren't interesting sometimes, but we are here because of you. And so we're at a point where I wanted to be for quite some time, being able to have you have a live voice in the show. So once again, that's it for this week's Fearless Flight Live. Hope you have a great week. If you're flying, happy landings and blue skies. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.